Mr. Rhodey, tell us.
To prosecute non-citizens before secret military commissions. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't a non-citizen. Then they came to enter homes and offices for unannounced sneak and peek searches. And I didn't speak up because I had nothing to hide. Then they came to reinstate COINTELPRO and resume the infiltration and surveillance of domestic, religious, and political organizations. And I didn't speak up because I no longer participated in any organization. Then they came to arrest American citizens and hold them indefinitely without any charges and without access to lawyers. And I didn't speak up because I would never be arrested. Then they came to institute TIPS, the Terrorism Information and Prevention System, recruiting citizens to spy on other citizens. And I didn't speak up because I would never be spied on. Then they came to institute the Total Information Awareness System, collecting private data on every man, woman, and child in America. And I didn't speak up because I couldn't do anything about it. Then they came for immigrants and students from selected countries, luring them under the requirements of special registration as an excuse to seize them and detain them. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't required to register. Then they came for anyone who objected to government policy because it only aided the terrorists and gave ammunition to America's enemies, and I didn't speak up because I didn't speak up. And then they came for me, and by that time, no one was left to speak up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. It's a great pleasure and honor to be with you this evening and to address you at the close of what I gather has been an exciting and dynamic convention. I'm very grateful for those kind words, Jim Gray, and for your courage and courage of your convictions in speaking out on important issues through your whole life and most recently. And I'm grateful to the organizers for inviting me to speak this evening. I'm going to spend a few minutes trying to put this current assault on civil liberties into a historical setting, and then, time permitting, to reflect on what's happening today, both in terms of the attacks on civil liberties and, if I'm able, the corrosive role that certain members of the administration and of the Justice Department have played in laying the groundwork for the violation of international law and even for setting the stage for torture. I think many of you, from the nodding of heads and the signs of recognition, captured the echo of my original words as based on the words of the Reverend Martin Niemöller, writing in 1937. The Reverend Martin Niemöller is famous for writing, "First they came for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists. Then they came for the Jews. Then they came for the Catholics. And then they came for me." And the Reverend Martin Niemöller himself was sent to a concentration camp for his resistance to the Nazi regime, from which he survived to write those original words. And they have been passed down to us generation after generation as a warning signal, as a symbol that a repressive government, when it moves against those who are most marginalized, who are at the fringes of society, who are in communities that are easy to target, that government, if it is not restrained, will move ever increasingly against others in society and soon against all those who stand in its way. And it was in October of 2001, in the wake of the devastating attacks of 9/11, that the words of the Reverend Martin Niemöller came to mind. Because then, as the USA Patriot Act was signed on October 26, 2001, and as this ever-increasing assault on civil liberties was taking place, it seemed that the words of the Reverend Martin Niemöller deserved to be put into today's context. And this poem was half as long then as it is now, as I have added new stanzas almost every month. Let me suggest to you that there have been periods in American history when, due to crises, real or imagined, foreign or domestic, we have lost our way as far as civil liberties are concerned. We have done it out of fear, out of hysteria, out of opportunism, and now we can look back on those as very dark chapters in American history. And it would in each case take generations for us to see those times for what they were when they were occurring. But we now see them as shameful chapters in American history. The ink was barely dry on the Bill of Rights in 1798 when the Alien and Sedition Acts were passed during the John Adams administration. And here we have all the elements of what would come later. We have the coupling, because of fear with France at the time, of the Alien and Sedition Acts. Laws targeting, in that case, immigrant communities, aliens, and sedition, the libeling of the government, which was a crime. And it was in that period that hundreds of people were convicted and sent to jail under the Alien and Sedition Acts. Journalists who were criticizing the John Adams administration for simply expressing their views were convicted under the Sedition Act and sent to jail. Adams was a clever politician, and the Alien and Sedition Acts expired on his last day in office, so that when Jefferson came in, Adams and his allies were free to criticize Jefferson without fear of the Sedition Act. I'm glad the Sedition Act expired, but I want to point that out as an element of the politics that weaves itself throughout these ugly chapters. We move to the Civil War when Abraham Lincoln, that great American president, suspended the writ of Habeus Corpus on at least 8 occasions. The writ of Habeus Corpus, so important to our law, borrowed from English law, the right of anyone detained, even beyond all their appeals having been exhausted, to come before a court, to have their body, the corpus, brought before the court in order to challenge their incarceration. And yet, fearing for the nation, fearing for what today we would call national security, Abraham Lincoln suspended the writ of Habeus Corpus, although the Constitution resides that power with Congress. And yet he did it because of his fear and the fear of his allies. And hundreds and thousands of people were arrested and detained, civilians and others, without the writ of Habeus Corpus.